Hello everyone, Raven here. To move on, I'm going to go into another topic that's a little bit general, a little bit more common, but is one that I particularly find very interesting. And I think a lot of people kind of already understand, but they don't realize it. You're always going to have to like your villains. Every part of the story is something you need to enjoy as the author. What people get confused by when you first say this, especially if you're not a writer, is they wonder, okay, well, how can you like the villain? Aren't you supposed to hate them? Aren't they the ones that you're supposed to be against? Not like in that way. Like in the way of you like them as a character. Do you think it's a good villain? As in, is this a villain that fits right into the story? Do you find it interesting to read about this villain? Not, is this a villain you like him, you like what he does, you like how he is? No. Do you think it's intriguing? Do you think it's interesting? Does it do something to really make it push the book further? No. What this is really about is if you don't think it's interesting, if you don't think it's intriguing, how is somebody else going to? Now, what that means, okay, I don't think enough people think about this and really consider this. This isn't just a matter of, well, you don't like it, why should you expect somebody else to? That's not what this is about. No. What this is really about is if you don't see what's intriguing, if you don't find something interesting, if you don't find something enjoyable about reading about this character, you're not going to know what to focus on. How are you going to know what exactly within this character you need to emphasize, you need to develop, you need to portray more clearly? If you see nothing interesting, if this is just something you end up putting in there to fill in the space, and that's it, there's nothing more than just someone who fills a gap, how can you be sure there's anything there that's going to interest anyone? Now, it can seem kind of innocent almost. You have one or two characters here or there that people don't really think much of. Yeah, that's fine. But you're talking about the villain, that's a very central character. That's a very crucial character. You can't do that. Now, there are times where you can have a villain who kind of takes the backseat. But you still gotta have something interesting. As you find when you listen to critics, you read about writing, you do any of this study, there are so many different kinds of conflicts. And sometimes the villain isn't just this other character. Sometimes it's a little deeper than that. And sometimes the villain isn't really the villain. You consider, in a sense, Star Wars. Okay? Simplest example, biggest example. May not be the best fit, but it's easiest one to show. Darth Vader is the villain, at least in the first movie. But he's not really the center of it. He's not really the issue. He's controlled by the Emperor. The Emperor's the problem. Now, in the first movie, we don't see much of anything about the Emperor. It's all about Vader. Where is the real conflict? If you have a villain who's more there just to sort of close the gap, it may seem like you don't need to know exactly what you like about it. You don't need to have anything in particular that is going to really make them more of a fun character to read about, because maybe they're not going to be there as much. But if that's the case, it's because there's something else, another feature, another character, another aspect of the story that is going to be more interesting, that this character is there to add to. And if that's the case, then there does have to be something of interest in them in how they relate to the real opponent. Even when you've got a small character, there is the importance, maybe not of that character specifically, but do you care, do you find interest in what part they play in the overall story, what relationship they have with the other characters, what impact they have on the other characters, etc. If you don't care about that, how can you say the reader will? So really, this goes for every character. Now, it's always brought up with the villain because the villain's the one that you might think you need to hate them. If you just hate them and there's nothing more to it, that might work, but you're not going to be able to do much with them, and you're going to have to keep them more in the background. You think of, for instance, Lord of the Rings. The villain is Sauron, but he's always in the background. There's not much of anything about him. He's a very simple, basic character. He's just flat out evil and nothing else. Just this one who wants complete power and to abuse it. Nothing else. But that's the thing. It ends up, what is really fascinating, what's really interesting within the story, is the ring. And so what's important about the character is that he's the one who gives the ring the power it has. He's how the ring does what it does. It's no longer a matter of, what do you think of him? Is he very complicated? Is there much to him? No. What it's about is the ring. What do you think of the ring? And he's one aspect of the ring. So the question that comes out of this is, what makes it interesting? Plenty of things. It can be so much about him. It can be different characteristics about him. It can be different things about their past. It can be about their own personal story. It can be their motives. It can be different things. But there's got to be something that piques the interest. I mean, one of the most well-known villains of all time is probably Hannibal Lecter. Why? It's the contrast. You've got this very sophisticated man who's doing the most animal and primal actions you could imagine. You've got him on both extremes that just don't fit together well, and yet somehow this character is done in a way that makes them fit together, and that's what does it. That is what fascinates people. That is what makes it interesting. That's what makes it impressive, is when you can fit those two things together like that. So what is going to be the focus of the character? Hannibal? It's his intelligence, sophistication, and his cannibalism. It's the contrast. Who's it going to be for you? In Vader, one thing I always thought, well, at least for me, one thing I found intriguing about it, even though I will say, yeah, a lot of it is probably just the design, the way he's done, but what I found interesting is the way he seems like the most evil. He seems like the most powerful. And yet, one of the first scenes we see of him is him putting himself under the authority of somebody else. Kind of unexpected what the kind of portrayal this character has. So it's always got to be some little thing in there that really makes you curious about this character. What's going on? You know, something seems a little strange, and you just want to know more of what is really happening there. And so that's what you got to find. You got to find that part of their personality, or that part of their history. Ironically, to me, now this does depend on the writer, very much so. To me, I often find the more difficult is how to make a hero that people are really going to be drawn to. If you have just your plain average character being your hero, it's not going to work. If nothing's wrong, everything's fine, There's going to be no tension. You've got to have that flaw. It's almost the opposite of what is done with some villains. It's like with Hannibal. Sophisticated and intelligent. So, what is the weakness with the hero? You kind of go to the opposite side of it. With the villain, what are the things that are actually good? With the hero, what are the things that aren't good? What are the bad things? Some, it can be like what I just discussed, some kind of mystery of their past. It could be something that small. It could very well be that they are one of those characters that really is an anti-hero. There's a large scope of it, but the problem is, too often, you can get too focused on making the hero that you forget to make the hero the character. If they have no challenge, there's no story. And that's what makes him of interest. So there's many ways to do it, many angles to come from. But above all, if you don't find something that's interesting, you can't expect anybody else will find something that's interesting. Because this is your story. This is what you're writing. This is what you want to write. For two reasons. One, it can make it so that some of the story nobody's going to have an interest in. Nobody's going to care. It's going to just be kind of dull and flat. Just seem long and slow. Or sometimes it can get even worse. Sometimes it might get to the point where you feel like you have to find something there. You have to add something there. But you keep trying, but you can't get it. And because of that, you're just going to keep adding more and more and more of what would be boring. It's going to take up too much of your time, too much of your focus away from the things that you do care about, you do find interesting, that are useful, and putting it on what shouldn't even be there from the first place. This is something that can go on for quite a while because there's so many different methods, so many different angles, so many different kinds of characters. But just in general, wanted to discuss how you need to find those things that are going to be of interest. Not just to the reader, but to you. Hope that can be helpful for some of you. I'll see you guys next time. God bless.